Dear colleagues, I'm Dr. Nadi Fadina and you're watching my online teaching session on international film business. Since we are having a distance interview today and my micro-lecture presentation requires showing you multiple slides, images and documents to support my points, this video will be periodically intercut with the visual presentation content. Before the actual session, I would like to say a few words about my teaching philosophy and pedagogical practices. Although my teaching style and techniques are evolving regularly as I improve my work through professional development, by studying my peers and by listening to my students, there is a solid foundation to my teaching. I am a strong believer in engaging and agile pedagogies, and I encourage students to actively participate in the learning process, customizing and personalizing the material and their learning pathways. I also find creative use of technologies very important in my work, as they enable me to establish a productive learning and teaching environment. Being a screen industry executive and teaching media management subjects, I also swear by situated pedagogy. My material has a real-world relevance. In my classes, I use real-life examples and case studies, concentrating on the current issues in industry, government and society. I pay special attention to continuous diagnostics and feedback to make sure my teaching and assessment are contextualized according to my students' goals. Now let's see how I'm actually doing all of this in the class. I have developed a hypothetical unit for you, management of a film production company. Some material that I use is taken from my upcoming first comprehensive textbook on film business. The rest is specifically designed for this interview. Before and after the actual teaching session, I will explain my choices of teaching tools, techniques, approaches which I utilize during the session. Because of our simulated lecturing environment, some aspects of these actual learning sessions are hard to replicate. Many things I would rather discuss in the class than transfer them to homework activities, but for the sake of this lecture, I had to do it. I also have to explain rather than demonstrate several other important points so that you can fully appreciate the work in the classroom. The thing that I always keep at the back of my mind teaching media management is student current and future employment in this fast-pacing industry. I must equip them with transferable skills and encourage to be flexible and adaptable. For example, while teaching how to manage a film production company, I realize that career paths can change. My goal is to provide them with the knowledge on all aspects of the industry, as well as global economies and contexts. That's why, while concentrating on managing a film production company, I actually integrate into my material multiple aspects of media policies and economics, strategic management, cultural policy, programming, and audience development, thus providing my student with a broader but solid foundation in all these areas, which gives them more possibilities for their executive career development. In my attempt to make classes optimally designed to meet the diverse needs of students, I start the unit with discussing students' expectations of it, run the first of many diagnostic sessions, initially assessing the knowledge of the subject and the industry. Sometimes students are transferring from a different field and might have some misconceptions of how film business operates. For example, they would consider film markets to be a perfect place to pitch their projects in development, when in reality, film markets and festivals are extremely busy periods of trading the existing projects, and projects in development stand very little chance to be noticed. Other times, students have some understanding or some innovative ideas but do not have theoretical base to clearly articulate their knowledge. That is why, in the beginning of the unit, I distribute and upload on the virtual learning environment site the vocabulary I make myself that contains all the terminology they will encounter in my class. I generally always actively populate virtual learning environment site with you name it, PowerPoint presentations, statistics, articles from the trade press, and so on. Also, my students always receive a folder with intellectual property and media law documents. This thick. These are actual hard copies of the material they access digitally. I expect and encourage students to come prepared for the classes, which in the long term makes them independent, autonomous learners, and that is one of my priorities. In a sense, it shifts the role of the teacher-student dichotomy. I act as a facilitator for discussion, mentor for their projects, which they develop in academia and then immediately bring into their work. I never want my students to be passive receptacles of knowledge. I always treat them as my colleagues and future media leaders and innovators. I'm always creating a simulated environment of real industry in terms of class. For example, an unexpected elevator pitch, during which they have 30 seconds to sell me the idea of their company or the projects that they are working on. We then discuss it in groups, and students acquire both my and their peers' feedback, which help them to find ways to improve as we progress with the unit. I always bring real-life examples into the class. I bring the projects that I personally worked on. To give you an example, this was our collaboration with Cargo Entertainment on Aronofsky film Zipper, and as well as Angriest Man in Brooklyn, with Mila Kunis and Robin Williams. By now we have the performance data, the lifespan of the project, or we can analyze it in a historical perspective. What decisions were right, and what could have been done differently. Another type of projects I bring are in development. However, they are constricted by a non-disclosure agreement and are demonstrated in the class only. For example, this is our collaboration with the former Disney executive Max Howard, and students can live track the project through a full cycle. In the process, students analyze multiple factors like project's potential market, target audience, and audience development mechanics. They can also analyze the team behind the project, and they can make prognosis on how their business would be affected if they could produce this animated film. And today's lecture is class number 9 in the unit information form, and we will be discussing marketing tools. By now our group has studied the global film market and its operation. I have created a simulated environment in which students are building and managing their own film production company. We started with simulating an establishment of the production house, choosing a type of venture, partnership or limited liability, and formulating major goals and initiatives based on students' analysis of the internal and external environments in which the organization would compete. I guided them through a creation of a sound business plan, simultaneously developing their first film project the company would hypothetically produce. I always encourage them to see the bigger picture. In order to be effective managers, they then develop a marketing strategy for their company's first film, including website, the buzz, press release, and so on. This way, I help them to adapt to the environment in which the 360-degree commissioning is becoming a requirement. So, let's begin our lesson. Right, guys, so our goal today is to develop an advanced understanding of marketing strategies utilized in the current film market and the context in which the strategies operate. As a result, we shall be able to understand the relationship between film finance, film marketing, and film distribution, and start developing our own research and insight into critical concepts about conventional and new approaches to media management and marketing. Today, I would like to break down a case analysis for you, and we shall try to understand some aspects of international film business by seeing what happens. Let's briefly revisit the material that we already studied. We already know that major studios have their own distribution companies and make deals with theater chains. As an independent production, we have to operate in the market of built-in release dates. Dates set for the majors as soon as they greenlight the projects. As we have previously discussed, expensive advertising campaigns are conducted in advance. Film have a limited distribution window and therefore a limited lifespan. Now, new information to put under our belt. Unlike other industries, there is no price competition in picture releasing. So all other films represent the ultimate competitor. Distributors try to avoid launching a new film at the same time as another similar picture. Do you remember a boom on 3D technology several years ago? In summer 2010, more films were released in 3D and IMAX technology than ever before, creating a lot of competition. By the third day of the exhibition, many potential 3D hits were already in decline due to saturation of the market. Another important thing to take away with you today is product life cycle. Film is a commodity and in this sense is similar to other products on the market. Any product's life cycle goes through multiple phases and is about a life of a product in the market with respect to business and commercial costs and sales measures. To say that the product has a life cycle is to assert three things. Product has a limited life. Product sales pass through distinct stages, each posing different challenges, opportunities, and problems. Products require different marketing, financing, manufacturing, purchasing, and human resource strategies in each life stage. There are four main stages of the project life cycle: market introduction, growth stage, maturity, and decline. We shall continue discussing this subject next time, but I want you to start thinking about it. For typical product, first stage, market introduction, has the following characteristics. Costs are very high, sales volumes are slow to start, demand has to be created, customers have to be prompted to try the product, and the producing company makes no money at this stage. The second stage of product's life cycle is the growth stage. Costs are reduced due to the economies of scale, sales volume increases significantly, profitability begins to rise, public awareness increases. Competition begins to increase with a few new players in established market, and increased competition leads to price decrease. The third stage is about maturity. As the product matures, costs are lowered as a result of production volumes increasing and experience curve effects. This stage is also characterized by peaking volumes when market saturation is reached. Number of competitors entering the market increases as well. Prices tend to drop due to the proliferation of competing products. Brand differentiation and feature diversification is emphasized to maintain or increase market share. And then comes the decline. It is the terminal stage where sales drop and production is ultimately halted. Profitability falls at this stage, eventually to the point where it is no longer profitable to produce the product. How about films? Films are not typical products, although they are consumer goods, of course. If the film secured a theatrical release, the market introduction stage starts with theatrical premiere. Its introduction costs are high. Producers invest a lot in advertising, trying to create a buzz around the film. The life cycle of film at cinema is short-lived, and a picture never really lasts more than 3 months in theaters. Typical box office revenue will influence overall film popularity and the overall revenue of the film at every stage of the distribution. But what happens then? How about the second stage, or maturity and decline stages? After our class, please pick up any film of your choice and write down its life cycle the way you understand it based on this model. In order to do that, you need to research films, marketing campaign, distribution strategy, and performance data. Think whether the film is still generating profit for the producers and would it continue to perform. Think about your film's trajectory as it goes through multiple distribution channels. Can we talk about multiple life cycles? Can the product be reborn every time it enters new distribution channel? Please analyze your chosen film and try to bring it into the context of a bigger, larger world economy. How does it differ, let's say, from computer game life cycle, or a medical drug, or a phone? We shall begin our next class with discussing your findings. However, all films start with the initial marketing campaign targeted at a particular window, whether it's theatrical release or streaming only, and target audience. Any interesting and successful marketing campaigns of a feature film that comes to mind? One that comes to my mind is Minions, a film released on July 10, 2015 by Universal. With a production budget of 74 million, the opening weekend box office sales were almost $116 million and total global box office over $1 billion. By then, only two animated films, Frozen and Toy Story 3, have ever topped 1 billion in global sales. And both are from Walt Disney, the main rival of Universal. And again, by comparison, Frozen had a budget of 150 million and Toy Story 3 cost 200 million to make. Obviously, Minions had the help of its existing franchise following from the Despicable Me films. If you remember, it was an actual Minion mania. Minions were everywhere. At that point, Universal was undertaking one of its biggest ever marketing campaigns to promote Minions. The studio decorated theater with giant minions, put yellow labels on 500 million of Chiquita bananas, and joined with more companies than ever before. Amazon, General Mills, McDonald's, studio parent Comcast, Snapchat. Partners alone have delivered $593 million in ads and promotions. Less than half was for ads such as TV and print, the rest being the estimated value of promotions. For example, using Minions on cereal boxes. So once again, $593 million. Let's look at the Northern Market campaign. Interestingly, Universal began promoting Minions on TV in December 2014, an early start for a summer release. The spots included a 4.4 million ad during the Super Bowl on Comcast NBC network. Now, what do we know about Super Bowl advertising? Historically, Super Bowl advertising was all about big brands. 30 seconds cost $45 million. Again, historically, advertisers were assured that regardless of their demographic target, it will be watching it because everybody was watching Super Bowl. At your spare time, please read Forbes' article on these changes and we shall discuss it next time. I uploaded it on your virtual learning site. Nevertheless, in 2014, Super Bowl was still delivering. All these tactics were so successful that David O'Connor, Universal's VP of Global Brand Marketing and Partnerships, noted, Minions have permeated the pop culture. Did you know that Minions even have their own color by Pantone, Minion Yellow? Have you heard, guys, of the Pantone and Pantone matching system? Yes? This is basically a universal, standardized archive of every tint, color, and shade possible. Pantone stores names, reference codes, printing formula. So, of course, colors cannot be copyrighted and cannot be owned, but Pantone does own their names. And they will sell them to you for a fee. For example, let's say you're a global corporation like McDonald's and you want to ensure that the specific yellow of your iconic arches is exactly the same everywhere in the world. So you go to Pantone. So color becomes a synonym of a brand itself. Think about it. So if you want to learn more on color branding, you may find useful an article that I uploaded on your virtual learning site from Forbes on Lufthansa. If you're curious, please also research whether Universal capitalized on this Minion Yellow brand color. So summing up, while Comcast bought Universal for its larger TV operations, the film studio and theme parks, where Minions obviously are stars now, Minions turned out to become one of the best parts of the whole acquisition. Now let's compare Mignon's marketing campaign with the recent release of Disney's Christopher Robin. The PG-rated movie, which cost 70 million to make, sold about 25 million in tickets in North America on the opening weekend. Well, a respectable start, if still a long way from profitability. One of the key elements of Disney reinvention as a movie studio is the effort to maximize the volume of its existing intellectual property. That has led to live action remakes of animated classics such as Cinderella, The Jungle Book, Beauty and the Beast, and so on. Marketing campaign of the film, of Christopher Robin film, included a couple of nostalgic, heartwarming trailers, quite conservative posters, and a moderate online campaign. The movie official website is very bare bones. There is no synopsis, no cast lists, no interactive adventures, anything, nothing else. Just the trailer and a collection of videos. An online campaign included promoted posts on social media that used various videos from the rest of the campaign, Facebook personal pages for the characters, some interviews. The highlight of this social media marketing campaign was the interaction that Pooh had with his Twitter audience. Disney came out with an idea for fans to tweet their questions to Pooh, and he would supply some words of his wisdom back. Outside of the release of marketing materials, the movie's first real press activity was when it was a part of Disney nostalgia-heavy CinemaCon presentation to media and exhibitors. A month before the premiere, Disney released several featurettes that explained how this film fit into the long history of Winnie the Pooh, particularly the animated classics. The cast obviously did a few Q&As, some show appearances. The red carpet premiere allowed the cast to talk more about the gentle, slow theme of the movie. So quite conservative, good old style, and less engaging than Minions. So what audience Disney has been trying to reach? Well, most likely adults who want to share an emotional moment with their kids. But did the marketing campaign work? Seems like opening weekend numbers were quite disappointing. Comparing to Minions, almost 116 million opening weekend. Maybe it's the talent involved? Was it the right choice? At your spare time, please read the article from Hollywood Reporter called All the Crown Prefer Season Stars and think how this choice of the talent played into the product's strength. If it did, what does it tell us about the target audience and film's unique selling points? Please be prepared to discuss it next time. To help you a little, think about how Disney, over the years, has skyrocketed the story of Winnie the Pooh, transforming it into different mediums over the years, from cartoons, storybooks, to live action films. The most important thing to remember is that Christopher Robin can lose money and still be considered a success inside Disney. If nothing else, the film raised the profile of 92-year-old Pooh, who still generates more than 1 billion in merchandise sales annually for Disney. However, the film faced major setbacks. Today, Hollywood studios rely on foreign markets to increase their bottom lines. Not only film industry though, let's say luxury fashion industry relies heavily on Chinese and Asian markets, so it's a part of a bigger trend. In this light, Christopher Robin may have a hard time making up the slack overseas. China, which restricts the number of American movies that play in its theaters, declined to give the film a release date. Maybe Disney had already received its share of slots. Maybe there is still sensitivity about Chinese president being compared to Pooh. We don't know. Now, since we mentioned the Chinese markets, let's very briefly pause here. We have discussed multiple times the expanding nature of this market, its importance in terms of its revenues. Ernst & Young, one of the four big accounting and consulting companies, forecasted China will surpass the US film market by 2020. We also know that since 1994, China has had a quota on the number of foreign films that could be shown in Chinese theaters on a revenue sharing basis. How many films are allowed? 34. 34 films per year, with the proviso that at least 14 will be in 3D and IMAX. The problem is that the exact revenue sharing model has varied, but the current rule, as outlined in the 2012 US and China Memorandum of Understanding, allows the foreign producer to keep 25% only of the domestic revenues, without any withholdings or deductions. Hollywood has been negotiating a new deal with China for more than a year in hopes of raising the quota, increasing the percentage of revenue shares, and gaining more control, or at least transparency, with respect to distribution logistics such as release schedules and blackout dates. But the ongoing US and China trade war has put an end to these negotiations, effectively giving China the ability to take whatever position they want. Meanwhile, an alternative to the quota input system has emerged that may render the whole discussion moot. For years, in parallel with the quota-based foreign films, China has allowed the importation of buyout foreign films. Films bought for a flat amount with no required profit sharing. But in recent years, as the Chinese box office has become ever more profitable, the competition for buyout films has gotten increasingly fierce, with many distributors offering better terms. Any recent examples, guys, of the buyouts you remember? Well, the most famous example of profit sharing on a buyout film came in January 2017 with Resident Evil, the final chapter. Welcome home. It became a smashing hit in China, to the surprise of all the parties. Have you heard of any capitalization on this success? Yes, Mila Jovovich, star of the Resident Evil, is starring in the forthcoming Chinese film called The Rookies, set to be released in December 2018. So let's keep an eye on it. Let's see how it performs. Keep in mind also that China's theatrical distribution system is dominated by two big players, both of which are state-owned. Even the buyout films have to go through those distributors to play in theaters, because foreign companies are legally prohibited from distribution films in China. Anyway, as we discussed earlier, if you're an independent producer, it's a good time to be selling to China. In the face of maturing investment opportunities, multiple internet companies are ready to enter Chinese film market. Some of these Chinese internet giants like Alibaba Pictures consider that the new film content will stimulate the development of other IP-related projects, which we clearly see with Minions. Animation in general is one of the big trends nowadays. Animated films, due to its ability to cross language barriers, and again, look at Minions, who have their own abracadabra language and still manage to clearly articulate the plot, turns out to be the new priority for co-production activities. However, we should not forget that local films might perform better than Hollywood films. For example, 2012 low-budget Chinese comedy Lost in Thailand quickly became the biggest ever Chinese-made box office hit in China. It generated 1.17 billion yuan. This is approximately $191 million. If we compare it to Avatar, with its huge budget of $237 million and 150 million promotion budget, it earned 1.4 billion yuan, which is $204 million. So 191 million low budget film and 204 Avatar. So when we consider such films, which are the biggest and the best that Hollywood has to offer, that enjoy the backing of strong local partner and government support, yet still struggle to beat a low-budget B-level Chinese language film, local film. We know something is not working. Because Hollywood blockbusters remain highly expensive to produce and market, they need the growth from overseas to compensate for the shrink in domestic market. At home, please think of possible ways for a foreign producer to overcome these obstacles. Maybe it's a certain type of content that needs to be produced. Maybe it's about language barrier. Maybe it's about co-productions with the Chinese companies. So think about it. But let's return to our case studies and what marketing strategies they used. And here marketing theory comes in. Often in marketing we talk about positioning. How you sit in the marketplace in the minds of the consumers. In the old days, during our golden age, studios were identified by particular genre. Disney's cartoons, Universal horror films, and so on. Today, studios' names are not brands that attract audience. How then they position their products? Here are some key steps to effectively clarify your positioning in the marketplace, and let's start thinking how it applies to our projects. We need to identify our direct competitors. We need to understand how each competitor is positioning their brand. We need to compare our positioning to our competitors to identify our uniqueness. We need to develop a distinct and value-based positioning idea, and we need to craft a brand positioning statement. So some examples of positioning statements. Here are some brands that you know and their positioning statements. Once you have a strong brand positioning statement, you can create a tagline or slogan that helps establish the position you're looking to own. So here are the taglines for these brands. So see how they transformed the positioning statements into slogans and taglines. How about film? Let's look at taglines of the case studies we are discussing today. Sooner or later, your past catches up to you. Think about the associative row of the tagline. Nostalgia, good old days. How about Minions? It's good to be bad. Mischief, fun. Let's have a little break now, guys, and play a little game. I shall give you a tagline of a famous film, and you guess what film it is, okay? He's having the worst day of his life, over and over. Yes, Groundhog Day. Another film, On the Air, Unaware. Truman Show, correct. Another one, Who You Gonna Call? Ghostbusters, of course. Now think, guys, how ingrained is this response to this Who You Gonna Call? If we think about it, the film was released in 1984. Why it became so catchy, and how can we create marketing campaigns of the similar caliber, which would last over 30 years? Dear colleagues, I will have to stop the lecture here, as we are running out of time. If it was an actual unit, as we continued working on it, I would then introduce my students to the audience development topic, while concentrating on the aspects of marketing, commissioning, programming, and distribution in terms of the media industry. I would challenge the existing data on consumer behavior and target audience analysis by, let's say, Daniel Kahneman, a Nobel Prize winner in economics, who argued that people, both the decision makers and leaders, and consumers as well, often make decisions without any reasoning behind it. So how can we talk about marketing strategies then? As you can see, while learning the mechanics of managing a film production company, students acquire knowledge and understanding of the political, social, and economic context of media management, the global regulatory, legal, and market environments in which the media operates. In the unit information form, you can read about the learning outcomes and skills obtained. In the end of the unit, students will complete an assessment which would allow them to demonstrate their ability to apply the acquired skills by preparing and presenting in class a business plan along with financing, marketing and distribution plan for their film, and a critical contextual essay, which allows them to critique their own production and managerial activities they have undertaken in the course of the unit and reflect on a wider analytical perspective on the issues affecting work in the industries. This allows me to ensure that they have a varied assessment diet during the course of their studies. I then provide them with a summative feedback which enhances student learning and assists them in their academic and professional development. And in the long run, all the mentioned earlier methods and techniques enable my students to become effective and successful media managers who can meet the challenges posed by the unprecedented change in the local and global media environments. Thank you very much.